3. Everyone to kindly take your seats as we begin the next session. I also request you to keep your mobile phones on silent. For any assistance, you can reach to the SIA-INDIA volunteers. This session focuses on ground segment as a service, the next Satcom infrastructure market. This section will examine how GSaaS can reduce deployment costs, speed market entry, and create new revenue opportunities in India's expanding Satcom ecosystem. I would like to invite on stage the chair and moderator, Ms. Kriti Khatri, Deputy Director INSPACe, the speakers, Mr. Keyur Gandhi, Director Space Regulatory Policy and Commercialization, Dhruva, Mr. Dialani, Managing Director, US Space, Ms. Aakansha Sharma, Project Manager, Kepler Aero, Mr.Siddharth Abburi, Director, Avantel, Mr. Abdul Asif, BDM-Space and Defense, Azista Aerospace. I request all the speakers to keep their remarks concise and within the allocated time. I now hand over the proceedings to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and I welcome you to the session on ground station as a service, the next Satcom infrastructure market. I'm thankful to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to chair this session, which has participation of eminent personalities from the space sector. Ground station plays a pivotal role in facilitating communication between space objects and their operations on Earth. Post-reforms and as per Indian Space Policy 2023, Indian entities are permitted to establish and operate ground stations such as SEC, telecommand, telemetry and tracking stations, remote sensing data reception stations and others for self-use as well as for providing ground station as a service with the authorization of INSPACe. So INSPACe has already granted GaaS authorization to many NGs, and recently we also granted authorization to Dhruva Space Private Limited for operating their ground station in Luleå, Sweden. In February 2025, TRAI released the recommendations on the terms and conditions of network authorization to be granted under Telecommunication Act 2023 and exempted these 3 ground stations, the SCC, TTNC and remote sensing data reception station authorizations from the Telecommunication Act, and they are to be governed as per the INSPACe authorization guidelines. INSPACe is working closely with DOT to help them in finalizing the security conditions for ground station as a service and revisions in the royalty fee for receive-only station. And we are very hopeful that their release this year will happen and bring clarity to the participants, to the NGs in doing ease of doing business and contribute more to the space economy. So now I welcome my different panelists over here, and without wasting much time, I pose the first question to Mr. Abdul from Azista. So Abdul, since India's global strategy in GaaS is still in initial stages, how can India strategize the business opportunities in GaaS so as to garner considerable share of the global market in this domain? I request you give a brief introduction of your company and then you can start with the reply. Yeah.
Thank you, Kriti. Thank you so much. And thanks for this opportunity here. At Aziz, myself, Abdul. I head the space and defense segment at Azista. And Azista is a satellite mass manufacturing company. We launched our first private satellite in 2023. Just 3 days back, we celebrated 3rd anniversary, and it has been doing very healthy. And last year, we happened to support a couple of startups and incubators build their CubeSats and other satellites. And we are in the firm of launching 2 more flagship satellites. Regarding our gas ground station as a service, I think first we need to accept that we are not at any stage as of today where we are doing any either mission planning or operations for any of the firms outside India. So, but of course this is one of the right times where Indian industry is blooming either in the production of maybe I could say upstream, midstream and downstream. So also we understand that ground segment is one of the segment which is least seen as importance, which only the operations team, I would definitely say, realize that how much it plays a crucial role. To have a ground station as a service, any player to be there, I see that first having a anchor customer from the government itself will track attention from international market to help us accelerate on ground stations as a service. So, thank you.
So, thank you, Abdul. So, if I ask Ms. Aakansha the same question on what are her views, like how the gas the business opportunities can be increased in gas to share the global market in this domain. So, what can be a game changer, how we can contribute or how India can take this lead? So please throw your lights, give a brief introduction about yourself, the company, and then you can go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kriti ma'am, and thank you everyone for this opportunity. I am Aakansha. I work at Kepler Aerospace. So let me give a brief or a short introduction about Kepler Aerospace. So we are a company, we have 51 plus ground stations worldwide and delivering ground stations as a service to satellite operators. And other than that, we have a vertical which is in RF intelligence. We work on, gather and deliver the warfare systems, electrical warfare systems, GPS, GNSS jammers. So that is it about Kepler Aerospace. And other than that, about the question where ma'am was asking about the India's global strategy in ground station as a service and how we can, expand it in the global market. So first, basically, it's not. India has a capability to develop the software potentials where right now it is not. Just limited to the antennas you put in a 7.6 meter antenna, a 5.5 meter antenna. It's not something that is limited to that. So when it comes to India developing for ground station as a service, the main thing we should focus on is the software developments where if a satellite operator is there, they don't have to, go to multiple ground stations, and everything should, be there at a one-point click, because when you're a satellite operator, you are building the satellite, doing the mission ops, everything should be there. So at least one part should be there that is not, very little bit hassle-free where you don't. So that is where the Kepler and we should actually in India focus on the software where we strategize ourselves and India in the capabilities where we can, make a unified command control or center where the people can or satellite operators can book in past scheduling and data transfer, data download. So yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Aakansha. So my two friends addressed that we need to have a regulatory framework clarity. We should have government as an anchor customer, and we should focus on the software-defined ground station. So my next question is to Mr. Keyur, and they from Dhruva Space, and they recently, as I mentioned, they have established their station at Sweden. So, Keyur, what were the hurdles that Dhruva faced while establishing this facility outside India, and how the regulatory framework from INSPACe helped you in this? Can you just highlight both the points?
Yeah, sure. So, Good morning, everyone. Keyur from Dhruva Space. We are a full-stack space engineering company. Apart from building and launching satellites, we are now also working on building our own ground station network. And as a company, one of the key considerations for us in the ground segment has been to also build it for captive consumption. Of course, that is added by a layer of the need to operate sovereign satellites in certain missions where we want an added layer of flexibility and security. Coming to the question, ma'am, in Lulia, I think one of the biggest challenge has always been the environment. To give an example, if one were to deploy a number of ground stations across the globe and try to standardize the kind of stations to be deployed for rapid deployment, that's probably not going to happen so easy because there are varied climatic conditions in which these stations need to operate well. The second biggest challenge has always been in the ground segment when we see today, there are a number of ways to go about establishing these stations. Having someone's established station leased back to you, having a hosting service taken to establish an antenna in another territory, and third, of course, is open a local entity and start building the station. Lulia in this case has been a rather easy, Sweden in this case has been a rather easy jurisdiction because of its maturity of dealing with the ground segment over the past few decades, if not years. In terms of logistical challenges, yes, there's always a challenge of how RF equipment is looked at in India versus other countries and the country which is through which it is transiting, and such operational challenges were there. Now, one of the biggest enablers that came to us from INSPACe is, I think, when we were trying to build this station and trying to have this offering work after our experience of also doing this with the station that we've established in Hyderabad, the regulatory framework that was given or the conditions that were given, I think those have been some of the most flexible and accommodating conditions, while those conditions also empowered us to undertake certain security measures and certain trust building measures with the local government there. It also gave a clear framework as to what has to happen right from the technical, financial and the operational level. So this really helps in making sure that there is scalability to this exercise. Now, if we want to, or if any entity were to now rapidly deploy 20, 30, 40 stations, that framework would certainly enable that to happen very fast. And I must go out of my way and also mention this whole exercise of establishing the station, getting it authorized and using it for ground station as a service happened in a period of 45 days, which in the space sector is unparalleled. I have not heard about something like this happening in any other jurisdiction. It could happen because we were in India and we had INSPACe supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you, Keyur, for the mentioning of the 45 days so that we all know how much INSPACe is working behind the scenes to help the space sector grow. So now I come to my friend Siddharth. So Siddharth, how is the manufacturing ecosystem gearing up for the emerging global space economy, and what has been the new R&D focus in the ground segment? You can just give a brief introduction about Avantel and then start. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Siddharth. I'm working in Avantel. Avantel is a 3-decade-old company working especially in defense electronics and communications, providing turnkey solutions to our defense forces and ISRO based on their needs and requirements. So we especially have complete end-to-end solutions for the defense in terms of satellite communication systems. We are one of the leaders in that space, where across all the platforms using our geostationary satellites, we provide communication equipments, and not just the communication equipment, we also provide the ground stations as well as the hub electronics and the network management software, which actually is used to control, govern and operate on a day-to-day basis in terms of strategic forces. On top of that, we are also into software-defined radios and radars. So for us, being deployed and maintaining more than 13 to 15 ground stations for the last decade, manufacturing ground stations became a next venture for companies like us. And we have set up a state-of-the-art ground station manufacturing facility in India itself in collaboration with Safran. We are actually manufacturing 9 tri-band full motion 7.3 meter antennas for the defense forces. Now, Coming to ground station as a service opportunity as a service itself to generate revenue, while we are building our infrastructure, technology, know-hows, as well as manufacturing on both full motion as well as for the geos, which everything can be done in-house internally and then provide turnkey solutions. The service side, I think we still have a way to go because from a global opportunity standpoint, yes, the space is moving towards a trillion-dollar economy, and 10% of that is on the downstream space, where rather than the upstream, it's 10% is downstream. And within that, GSaaS is, I think, growing at a 20% CAGR, which is very good. But now if you look at the true opportunity size for companies within the country, GSaaS is something where you can deploy, like I think kudos to Dhruva, where not just in India, they have gone abroad and deployed where it is closer and where the need is there and the ecosystem already understands. Now within the country, if I look at the opportunities available, from a government standpoint, there are no opportunities because they themselves are scaling up their own GSaaS antennas for their own needs and requirements. So they're all self-sufficient, especially from a security standpoint. There are not many satellites which are being launched which require GSaaS over here, and it's not affordable to even just cater to their requirements. So if you only consider GSaaS for the Indian ecosystem, there's zero opportunity. There will be in the future, but at least as of today, there's none. Now we need to partner with international organizations like INSPACe, KSAT, a Swedish agency, or ComSat, or others who are already there, established. They have a network, they have constellation operators available, and if there is an interest in two things. One is in terms of how quickly can you operationalize it. That is where I think companies like us who are also into manufacturing and have good collaborations to do in-house and then scale rapidly will have probably a good opportunity over there, which is what we are actually eyeing for. But then again, comes down to the cost, the regulations which are being framed as of today. We definitely have INSPACe who have been empowering us, supporting us in terms of speed at which it needs to be done. But there are a few bottlenecks, but once those things are cleared, we'll have a good requirement. And then second thing, we have to see if, as per our geographical location, what is the opportunity and how many constellation operators are requested and in what bands. So once we have a clear understanding of that, we as Avantel are first going from the building blocks. We are first doing the manufacturing so that if an opportunity arises, we can scale up and then collaborate with very good partners like INSPACe over here as well. So that's our strategy, ma'am. So yeah.
So thank you, Siddharth, for highlighting like how the R&D and partnership with the foreign established players can help in the growth of the ground station. So Mr. Jay Dialani, so I welcome to the panel. And so inter-satellite link and in-orbit relay is revolutionizing these days. So by these are helping routing data directly to the space instead of waiting for the ground station. And so how do you see this as a threat or a boom, or how are you planning to tackle, or how are you actually tackling this with the network of ground stations you have across the world? So you can give a brief introduction and start with the question. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Kriti. Can you guys hear me? Do I need to be louder, softer? Louder. Okay. The louder the better. Okay, my goal will be not to make you sleep, okay? Especially in the morning. Afternoon is a different story. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jay Dialani here. I lead the US office and also lead the India market development for INSPACe. We are headquartered in Milan, Italy. We are, I would say, second largest ground station as a service provider globally. And we have a network of 40 antennas around the world at 19 sites. We have over 200 satellites on our network currently, using a network. And the basis of GSaaS, it came up very recently, like around less than 10 years ago, where large operators like Planet, Spire, they were deploying their own ground station network due to the sheer need of getting the data down from the satellites. And there was no ground station as a service provider that could, I would say, realize the need. So, we started, it's a funny story, we started as a rocket company, and the investors were like, okay, there's like 200 of you guys, you're 200 rocket companies, so you better pivot. So we pivoted to the least mentioned, most underrated, as Abdul mentioned, segment of the stool, which is the ground segment. And we've been building our network slowly. We started with developing our own antennas, which didn't go well, but we then started to procure antennas from expert players like Orbit, Safran, Cobham, Avantel, and putting those ground stations together, deploying them at sites, at critical sites around the world, and then providing connectivity. What we have as IP is our orchestration software, which runs in the cloud. It manages contacts of our satellite, of our customer satellites, or our ground stations autonomously. So, everything is done in an automated fashion, no manual intervention needed, which is the bread and butter of our offering. What we have seen is, US, of course, is the majority of the market globally. Then there's Europe, but India is very close. It's very close third because the space economy is booming here. We have a bunch of customers in India. We serve them through our network. And coming to Ms. Kriti's question, we see evolution in the way satellites are managing their data downlink. So Earth observation providers or the new missions that are either maneuvering in orbit or want to conduct reconnaissance of other satellites, or they want to, I would say, do rendezvous and proximity operations with other satellites. That's the new regime. That's, the space war gaming is on. If you want more details, we can talk offline. I can tell you all about it. But these satellites are requiring more and more, I would say, connectivity, instant connectivity, so that players can command the satellites, players can maneuver their satellites. There's also the issue of space debris where they need to maneuver their satellites. So they need connectivity, I would say timely connectivity to the satellites in order to change their orbit or change their altitude temporarily to avoid that debris. So all these operations that are needed in space, they have a need for reduced latency. When I say reduced latency, what it means is they want to get in touch with their satellites quicker, faster, with more data, with more bandwidth. They want to downlink data. They want to downlink imagery, for example, that they've captured over some geopolitical countries, regions, as quickly as possible. And the only way to do that right now is through ground stations, although inter-satellite links is coming to fore. But inter-satellite links are only as good as how quickly can they downlink data on the ground stations, over the ground station. So we've been looking at a bunch of technologies. I think there are players out there in the market that provide instant TT&C connectivity over, I would say, geo satellites. So that's already been there. That technology is already out there. Inter-satellite links is quite mature at this point, I would say. There's more and more satellites coming up. Going up in orbit, which have the capability to speak with other satellites and form a network. From INSPACe perspective, we have been focused on, more recently, on increasing the ground network capability, increasing the geographically expanding our network to exactly target the latency aspect. So, if there's a satellite in, say, sun synchronous orbit going from North Pole to South Pole and back, we can provide latency as less as 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, you can get in touch with your satellite. But it can exceed that as well. It can go up to like 60, 70 minutes. And that's a lot for some of the satellites. So most recently, we announced a new technology that we are working on, where we will be providing an in-orbit mesh relay network to instantaneously get in touch with your satellite. So TT&C, small payload downlink over our network, or using our radios on the satellites. It's called TreeNet. So that's the next level of innovation we are bringing to the market because we realize that customers need quicker access to the satellites. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jay, for highlighting the progress being done by LeapSpace, the TriNet, the in-orbit mesh relay. Thank you. These are commendable to actually be in the business and keep winning. So, Ms. Aakansha, you mentioned that you have 51 ground stations worldwide. So, many nations these days are pushing for sovereign data frameworks requiring data to land within specific geographic borders. So, how can a globally distributed GaaS model satisfy strict local compliances, laws, and security requirements? So, can you highlight this?
Thank you, ma'am. So first of all, about the sovereign data, these days for the defense mission and for the satellite operators as well, the data has become, you know, an important aspect of the mission. And what I suggest and what my point of view is, before having the payload data reception with a global network, you can at least first, when your satellite launches, it's the first steps comes the commissioning of the satellite and the LEOP phase, where you need to stabilize the satellite and then work on the payload data reception. So with the global coverage, you can, you know, send commands and even all the, in every satellite for a mission success, every aspect is important, such as you cannot miss even a single detail, like what is the polarization, is it RHCP, LHCP, and so yeah, things like that. But my point is that before getting the payload data, there are two things. First, with the global ground station network, you can do TMTC, which is the first step when you launch a satellite. And second, even if it is a global, you need to have sovereign ground station. This is the responsibility of a ground station provider, that if we are working on a very, establish, provide that facility to the satellite operator. And secondly, the data needs to be end-to-end encrypted via MPLS lines or site-to-site VPN. So yeah, that is what we also do.
Thank you, Aakansha. So, Mr. Jay, can you highlight, so what are the sovereign data frameworks and how you are tackling this? What are your approach? Because you also have a network of ground stations, so you'll be able to like come up and guide us and enlighten us what is being faced by you worldwide. Yeah.
See, the whole thing about sovereignty is nations are increasingly wanting to launch their own satellites, okay, and establish their own ground stations on their own soil because they don't want data to percolate or to be downlinked anywhere else in the world. And that's primarily because of security concerns. Now, the way we are doing that is we are partnering with satellite operators who are already working with these nations on sovereign programs. And we are providing ground stations, we're deploying ground stations. It's a closed network because that's what the nations need. But we are also open for them to utilize our geographically expanded worldwide network so that they can, get in touch with the satellites or perform commanding, control, or reduce the latency of the payload downlink as much as possible. Because the reality is, if a country having ground stations or their own infrastructure, they can only get in touch with their spacecraft only when the spacecraft is above that country. And that's, that's depending on the latitude, longitude of that region, it may not be able to get so many, I would say, chances of contacts per day. So that's where the real, I would say, challenge is coming in these sovereign programs. And the way that all these cybersecurity concerns are being allayed is going through security frameworks. The standard security frameworks, Europe has NIS2, US is standardizing on CMMC, India might have another one, I don't know, what other security mechanisms are there. But, once you have these mechanisms in place. It's standardized cybersecurity mechanisms in place. Your data is, of course, your data is protected as much as possible. Also, data is encrypted at the source. When I say that, it means that when a satellite, say, captures an image, it encrypts that packet and then sends it down. It's encrypted, so no matter how, whoever hacks it, they just see a bunch of zeros and ones or noise, nothing else. So it's encrypted at the source, and only the sovereign nations, they have, they are able to decrypt their own data.
Thank you so much. So my next question is to Keyur. So these days, cloud integrated ground station services are enabling seamless satellite data downlink, processing and analytics, and supporting scalable and software-defined space operations. So you at Dhruva, do you consider these cloud giants like AWS, Azure Space your threats? Or are they an essential infrastructure partners that will help you actively build on top of?
That's actually a very interesting question and a conundrum for the long term. But I think today it is essential infrastructure, because when we look at the ground segment, one of the first considerations is how is the time from tasking to intelligence being optimized. Now, it's not simply the downlinking of data, but it's also the processing of that data and it being ready for use. Now, it can be analysis-ready data, it can be post-processed data, or whatever. But this infrastructure of processing the data is built on these essential softwares and their tools, which helps a satellite operator actually reduce the latency in real sense. Today, these networks have not been exclusive to their own cloud infrastructure. That cloud infrastructure has been open. It has been widely adapted across the globe. But the challenge that I do see in integrating this cloud infrastructure does come from the data handling challenges, which would be involved in taking the downlink data and processing it well. Looking at it in terms of a pure perspective of, is it simpler to do that? The answer can be yes and no, because for each satellite operator, that entire concept of operations, from tasking to downlinking the data to disseminating it or processing it, looks very different. Now, this layer of modularity needs to be added, and it might not always be the answer that it's only this particular kind of station that is needed. A customer may, or a user may choose to take data ranging from the IQ sample itself being streamed right up to there being some post-processing of the data itself at the local site, or anything in between. So while this infrastructure does become necessary for data storage, handling, processing, and a lot more, I don't see a trend where it would be these kind of stations that become exclusively predominant for use in missions going forward. And I think I'd like to take one step back and also go at the sovereignty concerns with these models, or these models where data handling and processing does happen over the cloud. There are still a lot of challenges to solve, not just in India, but across the globe. Today, while we see that there are a lot of standards coming out to treat data processing and downlink in a certain way, I don't think all the countries, or at least all the major spacefaring nations which have substantial ground segment presence, are on the same page on how this could occur. And software-based tasking and automation of missions, that has a very sensitive aspect too. When we look at automating how missions are operated, we also have to look at how the ground station operation is automated. That does require any particular satellite operator to access ground stations across the globe remotely. That means the control over of the local partner over that station may be rather limited, or the control of the satellite operator may be a lot more than what would be comfortable for that jurisdiction. Now, this layer of software then becomes a larger question. How do we structure it to meet all of these concerns? So that's the open-ended answer, I think, in short.
Thank you, Keyur. So, I would like to ask Abdul now. So, what are your predictions for the next disruptive innovation in ground station services?
as we see in the space domain, constellations, turnaround time, latency acts as an important key role in the full ecosystem of the space segment when we talk about satellites, its data transmissions also. Of course, it has been from ages that RF has been the key for reception of data. Uh, uh, but I do also envisage where optical transmission of data stations would be the next key for achieving such requirement. Of course, we have seen that clouds, mist, and thick forest areas where cannot be deployed for such requirement. But there are segments, geographical segments across globe which can be utilized, which has least cloud coverage or any hampered with climatic area for such application. Apart from these, we also know that it is no more a requirement that ground station has to be a static. Things have evolved in global market where you can deploy your mobile ground stations even of the size of 11, 13 meter deployable antennas. Talking about the space of geographical area, if it is still a concern, I think it wouldn't be a great challenge to deploy your stations maybe in international water bodies or offshores to cater deeper and more controlled manner of your own control of the whole links and covering the downlink, turnaround time, and of course the sovereignty of your data.
Thank you, Abdul. And now my final question to all the participants. Like, we are seeing growth in the Indian space ecosystem in the ground sector in GaaS. So according to you, how many GaaS operators should be authorized so as to have a profitability for all of them? Should we limit to 5, 10, 20, or what is your idea? So I'll start with Ms. Aakansha. Yeah, what is your say in this?
So the ground station as a service is a very understatement, as in the earlier days it was. But these days it basically depends on the market requirement rather than the gap. So it doesn't depend if you have 5, 10, 50 or how many ground station, until and unless you're getting your data and the quality of service that you're getting, the reduced latency, and like you cannot really ask someone to, don't enter the market and you won't, because you will take our profit. So you cannot really ask someone, right? But it basically, creating a value proposition for your company and, creating that, giving that end-to-end encryption that we were telling. And your answer is AES 26. It's the requirement in India. So, and Siddharth also said that to partner with global for data due to regulations, and I really would like to thank, because we are positioning India here through Dhruva Space, where we are setting up the ground station in Luleå, Sweden. So that is not just stabilizing their company, but it is positioning India as a space sector, as a stronghold in the space sector. So yeah, that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Kansha. Yeah, I'll ask Mr. Jay first. Yeah. So, yes. So, what is your suggestions or your take of how we should move with, how many operators should we allow in India? Yeah.
I think you let the market decide that. You enable as many operators as possible and then let them fight it out in the field. See, if I'm going shopping for a car, I need as many options as I can for myself. Okay, even though I have personal preferences, I would like to have options. I think it should be the same.
Thank you, Mr. Jay. So, yes, Mr. Abdul, now you can throw some light.
Right, thank you. First thing I would like to say that I just would like to take one step back. The moment when we say how many NGs or operators should be allowed to be there in the market. I think there is a huge requirement on the infrastructure side, the capability on the geography side, and support from the government. And these things also act as a bottleneck. So I think if those things are addressed, I'm pretty sure there are many players who would like to come for ground station as a service. And looking at the global market, there is already a huge demand. And even if we bring 5 or 3 or 10, I think everyone gets a very good share of a pie to run the market. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. Yeah, Siddharth.
I would like to echo what my fellow panelists have been saying, because it should be, we shouldn't restrict it. So it should be open-ended, and anyone who feels that they're actually adding value to the end customer, they should come into it. And given that value, it should be a win-win situation for both the company or the constellation or the operator requesting, and the value additions that you're actually bringing in this geographical location. So there shouldn't be any limit, because every company brings their own value additions to the solution, and depending on what the partner is seeking, appropriately a good collaboration happens, like the collaborations are happening over here. So it should be open-ended, and I think it's a very good, big market in itself from a global ecosystem standpoint, and India is growing, and it will grow for sure. So I think we're in the right space, right time, and the policy is coming out as well. So I think there's a bright future in this GSaaS space. So.
Thank you, Siddharth. Yes, Keyur. So what are your suggestions?
Yeah, I'd like to bring some facts to light that we should consider. One, for the satellite operator, the consideration always is how reliable and how economic would the ground station be. So everyone wants to have at least 1 or 2 of their own stations. Second, for the larger pool of the Indian ecosystem, the biggest consideration today, as was rightly pointed out by Abdul, is how fast can we build this infrastructure globally. So that means we need a lot many more people to start investing, so we build our networks too as our investments. And third, and the most important today, there has been a lot of strong elements of difficulties when there are stations try to be integrated into diverse networks. There's an element of exclusivity, there's an element of challenges in being competitive. So I think it's not a question of how many should be authorized, it's a question of how should each one be authorized. In India, it has been a clear signal for the past 4 years that the investments by the commercial space sector is also going to be a strong backbone of India's sovereignty ambition. So this network will also be useful in operating satellites that are launched as part of our strategic programs. So there should be maybe some more thought that could go into making sure that Indian stations continue to be interoperable. There's no artificial limitations which are added in investments by different enterprises that artificially limit the options that are available to use available ground stations in a single mission. And third, and the most important, is we should also encourage, not regulate, but encourage to diversify the locations at which this network is set up, and maybe that is more of the enabling factor that comes in. INSPACe is a regulator and a promoter, so there's probably from the more promotion side that there should be more efforts towards diversifying the presence of sovereign Indian ground stations, not just by the government, but through presence of commercial entities as well. It is only then that we would be able to get the best out of the government investments, be in R&D or be it through the venture capital fund, to get to the decadal vision probably a little bit faster and a little bit more cost efficiently.
Okay, thank you, Keyur. And before I summarize, I would like to have 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Anyone would, yeah.
I have been hearing about gas, basically with respect to TTC and Earth observation download. So to take one step further, what is the view of using gas or expanding gas for the communication constellation, for example, NGSO constellation, even for the GSO satellite, there is required multiple gateways. So what is the viewpoint in terms of the technical, regulatory and security aspect, whether this can be expanded or is there any limitation?
So anyone, do you want anyone specific to answer? It's an open question.
Open
so my
question,
friend,
anyone can.
Yeah.
In just one line to say, I think yes, that would have been the ideal preference. Even as industry, we represented that this layer of gateway should also be added so that there's ease for more communication constellations to operate out of the same stations. In India itself, I think it took about 3 years to figure out how to have the same authorized satellite operators share the same gateway or that ground station infrastructure. When we scale that up globally, the lawful interception and monitoring requirements that are applicable in a local jurisdiction where services are being given, in the jurisdiction where the satellite operator has been authorized to build and launch that satellite, plus the satellite operator's own security considerations, that itself artificially, or I think rationally so, limits the fashion in which liberalization of the regulatory framework for this particular use case of using it as gateways or also for like, uplink of TV channels, etc. How this could come to a framework that is this easy.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I'll make it quick. So, on the viewpoint, there's a ton of regulation all around the world. Wherever you want to set up ground stations, wherever you want to have landing rights for your satellite, it's a maze right now. Okay, honestly, that's one of the most time-consuming and most expensive issue around the globe. And no single country has a standard way of regulating all these issues. So that's what we need. We need a standardization on the global level. That's one. And the second one is infrastructure. So the more infrastructure we build on the software or on the hardware side, the easier it will be. Case in point, you have a cell phone, right? Everybody has a cell phone. It connects to cell towers. Do you care which cell towers it connects to? No, you just care about connectivity. That's how it should be. That's the telecom equivalent we want to bring to the satellite world.
Siddharth? You are, okay. So anyone else? Yeah.
Just a quick question. When you look at the globe, the entire eastern hemisphere, in certain aspects, looks like a black hole. If you look at the ground infrastructure, if you look at connectivity-related issues and so on, for most of the world, it's not easy to do business. Probably with Russia, with China, Mongolia, East Europe, all of that portion, right up to East Africa, and then into the Pacific Ocean. So around India, it's like a vacuum of space infra. Now, do you as GSaaS people look at that as an opportunity, and how can you best exploit that?
So the answer is 100% yes, sir. So there is an opportunity, and a lot of players are requesting for ground stations in our geographical locations. So as quickly as we can get things started going, because what international partners are looking at is clarity in terms of policy and guidelines and security policies as well, or the framework in general, to be shared with them. And once they have that clarity, then they are asking for that investment and collaboration to get started. So they are all waiting eagerly for that, and I think there's a big opportunity for us to... I think the guidelines have to be frozen, and in terms of pricing, in terms of security concerns, as well as the timelines to onboard a new operator in terms of our processes.
Anyone else would like to answer his question?
I'd like to answer on a lighter note, slightly lighter note on this, perhaps given the paucity of time. The satellite cannot be sensing and downlinking at the same time. That's not the ideal ConOps when we look at expanding around India. In terms of the difficult territories, I think as commercial operators, especially in space when we are starting out new as a sector, we need a lot more support and clout before we can start fighting the difficult territories, especially when we look at it from a tech diplomacy and a sanctions perspective. Maybe slightly too early for us to fight that when going into certain territories, but I think I'll leave it at that for now.
So thank you everyone. I thank my panelists. Yes, Siddharth.
I would also like to thank INSPACe for enabling K-band as well. So they have recently rolled out a program to get interest and deploy your tri-band antennas at NR, SIA and ISRO location. Because K-band outside a geofence location is not acceptable. So with that gap in mind, INSPACe has worked very closely with ISRO and has given approvals for private industry to set up ground station inside the premises to operate so that we can have that niche that in some countries car band is not accepted because of frequency clashes. But because of that, we might get additional requirements coming in our way as well.
Thank you, Siddharth, for highlighting this point. And I am thankful to all my panelists. They've enlightened us with the views and how INSPACe as a regulator needs to move forward. And I take this as my homework back home, that we need to have some really standardized things, and the pending issues with DOT is also taking a long time. We need to push that off so that the services get rolled out. And with that, I thank everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Please give a huge round of applause for our distinguished panel. I request the dignitaries to join us for a photograph, please. In front.